You'll always be a nobody, Mom declared over Sunday brunch. Her words cut through the warm winter air drifting from the open Savannah estate windows. 32 years old, and what do you have to show for it? A cramped rental, that vague consulting thing you call a career. I kept my expression neutral, swirling orange juice in my glass. If only they knew about the ocean view penthouse in Miami where I'd woken that morning, the one they'd never set foot in, they hadn't earned that privilege. Even your cousin James just made senior partner at Whitmore and Crane. Dad's voice joined the chorus of judgment, like I hadn't been following James' milestones in every family group chat for months. Meanwhile, what are you doing? Advisory work? Something like that, I said lightly. They didn't ask for details. They never did. If you'd just taken that junior accountant job at Parker & Lowe, Dad continued, shaking his head, $48,000 a year. Not bad at all. I stifled a laugh, thinking of the 2 deals I'd closed that week, each worth more than their entire annual income combined. I'm good, I said simply. Mom's tight-lipped smile didn't reach her eyes. Good. And that battered Honda you drive? The rundown apartment? I hid my grin. The Honda was a decoy, the apartment a placeholder. The real me lived very differently. Anyway, Dad puffed, straightening his blazer, we've got a huge meeting tomorrow. Big investors, high net worth types. They're interested in our flagship project, Harbor Tower, downtown. My fork nearly slipped from my hand. Harbor Tower? My Harbor Tower, the one I'd quietly purchased through a holding company 3 months ago while their firm scrambled behind me. Really? I asked, calm. Not that you'd understand, Mom said dismissively. Real estate takes vision. Capital. Connections. Of course, I murmured, glancing at my phone under the table. A message from my property manager blinked. Your parents' firm requested a meeting tomorrow. Should be fun. Dad stood, adjusting his jacket. Big day ahead. Maybe someday, Lily. If you work hard enough, you'll know what success feels like. I hugged them goodbye, still playing the part, the underachiever, the disappointment. If they followed financial news, they'd recognize the truth, the anonymous investor reshaping Savannah's skyline, quietly buying their dreams out from under them. That was me. But that would require seeing past their narrow definitions of success, and maybe glancing at the Aston Martin parked 2 blocks away. I called my building manager. Tomorrow should be interesting. He chuckled. What's the play? Standard protocol, I said, starting the engine. They'll need the owner's permission to access the property. You'll be watching, right? From my office, he replied. Exactly. I merged onto the highway, leaving behind the manicured certainty of their gated world. Make sure security knows. No special treatment. They want to meet the building's owner? They'll have to earn it, I said, a smile tugging at my lips. Just like they made you earn their approval. The Miami skyline shimmered ahead as I accelerated. Sometimes success isn't about proving people wrong, it's about watching them realize it themselves. A notification lit my phone. Morgan Stanley deal closed. $240 million profit. My parents' entire net worth wouldn't cover the commission. Funny how life works. While they bragged about cousin James' $190,000 salary, I'd just closed a deal that could buy his firm 100 times over. I glided into my private garage beneath Harbor Tower, nodding to Luis, head of security, a man who knew more about my real life than my entire family combined. Good brunch with the folks, he teased. Oh, you know, I laughed, stepping into the private elevator. The usual. A disappointment. A nobody. Should have taken Dad's generous offer to work at his sinking company. The elevator opened to my world, 12,000 square feet of glass and steel above the Atlantic. Every corner screamed a success they could never imagine. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the Miami skyline like a constellation. I dropped my keys on the marble console, checking a message from my assistant, Sophia. Your parents' firm filed their request to meet. Confirm for tomorrow. I grinned. Confirm it. Let them walk into Harbor Tower with pitch decks and false confidence, never guessing the person they dismiss over brunch owns every inch of what they covet. And I'll be watching. They'd bring their entire executive team, plus a few investors, really just golf buddies with mediocre credit and inflated egos. I loosened the cheap navy tie I'd worn for appearances, tapping the panel on the wall. My home office came alive, panoramic views of the Miami skyline, live security feeds from Harbor Tower. Time to prepare. Are the lobby cameras ready? I asked. All set, Sophia replied, scrolling on her tablet. We can record every delicious second. I strode past framed spreads and plaques my parents had never seen. Forbes, Private Equity Weekly, 30 under 30. The hidden architect of Harbor Tower stared back at me. Draft the standard rejection for their offer? Sophia asked. No, I said slowly, smiling. Tomorrow calls for something personal. Personal. Legal will compile every failed development, every defaulted loan, every burned investor. Projections, looming bankruptcy, everything? Exactly. Make it clear the owner of Harbor Tower doesn't deal with, what did Mom call me, a nobody? Sophia grinned. Perfect timing. I sank into my chair, the leather embracing me like a throne. Sunlight spilled across the room as Biscayne Bay glimmered below. Oh, and tell security, I trailed off, savoring the anticipation. You'll be too busy counting your billions to bother. Something like that. I ripped off the tie and tossed it into the trash. Tomorrow, they'd finally see what success looked like, even if it came from their so-called disappointing daughter, Lily Sinclair. The next morning, I settled in with coffee as Harbor Tower's lobby feed filled my central screen. There they were, Mom in a dated Chanel suit, Dad in a faded power tie, flanked by their investor entourage, men whose combined net worth wouldn't cover my property taxes. They've arrived, Sophia said, barely containing a smirk. Cue the protocol, I murmured. Not yet, I added, leaning back in a chair that cost more than Dad's sedan. Let's enjoy the show. James, my head of security, stepped into frame. Good morning, he greeted warmly. Dad puffed up, voice dripping with false authority. We have a meeting. Sinclair Development Group. Yes, James replied, glancing at his tablet. I'm afraid there's been a change in protocol. All potential buyers now require explicit authorization from the owner to access the executive floors. Mom's carefully maintained smile faltered for the first time. But we have a scheduled appointment, she protested. Surely you can't mean. Owner's orders, James said smoothly. Very private individual, very selective about who gains access. Do you know who we are? Dad's voice rose a fraction. Sinclair Development is one of the most respected firms in the city. I smirked, sipping my coffee as I pulled up their financials on my main screen. 3 failed projects in 12 months, 2 defaulted loans, credit barely better than payday lenders. Of course, sir, James said evenly, poker face flawless. However, the owner's protocol is strict. Perhaps you'd like to submit a formal request for a meeting first. This is outrageous. Mom's voice hit that sharp register I remembered from childhood, the one reserved for when the world didn't bend to her will. We are serious buyers. Who does this owner think they are? Through another feed, I watched their investors shift nervously, hollow-pocketed golf buddies, expecting an easy acquisition, now learning the hard lesson of real power. Sophia appeared with my morning espresso, the porcelain cup worth more than Dad's prized Rolex. The rejection letters ready? She asked. Not yet, I murmured, eyes glued to the screen. Let them stew. Down in the lobby, Dad leaned forward, sunburnt face pale with frustration. I want someone in charge now. I am in charge of building security, James replied, voice calm as still water, and without the owner's permission, you cannot access the executive floors. Well, then how do we contact this owner? One of the investors asked, his confidence draining fast. The owner reviews all requests personally, James said, though I should note they are particularly selective about firms with complicated financial histories. Mom's hand flew to her pearls, the faux ones she flaunted at country club luncheons. What exactly are you implying? Simply stating policy, ma'am, James said, professional smile locked in place. But if you like, our legal team can provide a detailed explanation of why your firm may not meet the owner's standards. Perfect timing, I whispered to Sophia. She tapped her tablet, and on the feed I watched a security assistant approach the group, envelope in hand. For Sinclair Development, the assistant announced crisply, handing over a thick envelope from the owner's legal team. Dad snatched it, hands trembling ever so slightly. Tearing it open, I zoomed in on the lobby feed, savoring every flicker of emotion across his face as he scanned the first page. This is, he stammered. A comprehensive review, James offered helpfully. It details why Sinclair Development does not qualify for a meeting with the owner, including a thorough summary of recent business challenges. I took a slow sip of coffee. The look on their faces was priceless, pride meeting reality, and reality winning. Tomorrow, the full show would begin. The investors shifted uneasily, inching toward the exits, suddenly more interested in their phones than this doomed deal. Mom's flawless makeup couldn't hide the flush creeping up her cheeks. This is impossible, she hissed, flipping to the next page. Dad muttered under his breath as he turned sheet after sheet, each detailing failures they'd buried, loans they'd defaulted on, and promises they'd broken. How did they get this information? He demanded. I smiled from my glass-walled penthouse office, recalling every family dinner when they dismissed my tech work as a cute hobby. Amazing what you can uncover when you understand data analytics, a concept their firm still treated like a passing fad. Sir, James said, polite but firm. The owner also asked me to convey that Harbor Tower is not considering partnerships with, he glanced at his tablet, eyes flicking over the note, developers whose last meaningful success happened 20 years ago. Mom yanked the packet from Dad's shaking hands. These numbers, this detail, this is private. Not to someone who knows where to look, I murmured, sipping espresso as Sophia appeared with an update. Their investors are pulling out, she reported, grinning. Harrison Development stock is already sliding. Put it on the main screen, I said. A beautiful red line plunged in freefall across the graph. My parents had always preached that reputation was everything. Today, they were learning just how true that was. In the lobby, James remained unflappable. If you'd like, we can accept a formal request for a meeting, though the owner is currently in the penthouse, occupied with more promising ventures. My phone buzzed. A message from Mom, Billy. Honey, are you free for lunch? We need to talk about family opportunities. Ah, the last play. When all else fails, call the unsuccessful child, the one whose consulting job they now hoped might offer insight into Harbor Tower's elusive owner. If only they knew. We demand to speak to whoever is up there, Dad barked, the same commanding tone that once made me shrink. Now, it only amused me. James, ever the professional, glanced at one of my cameras, faintest smile tugging at his lips. I'm afraid the owner is quite busy, he said, coolly, currently reviewing some fascinating security footage. I pressed the intercom, lowering my voice just enough to sound detached. Everything all right in the lobby, James? The effect was immediate. My parents froze mid-breath, their investors stiffened, eyes darting toward the marble ceiling as if God himself had spoken. Even the janitor stopped wiping the doors. Just clarifying our policy for some unsuccessful developers, James said smoothly. Ah, Sinclair Development, I echoed, voice carrying through the lobby. Please remind them that, unlike their family dynamics, business success requires more than showing up and demanding respect. Mom's flawless complexion went ghost white. Dad's power tie suddenly looked like a noose. You can see us? Mom whispered, scanning the security domes like prey spotting a hawk. I see everything in my building, I said evenly, savoring every syllable, including desperate firms trying to save themselves with other people's money. Tell me, do you treat all your partners the way you treated your children, ignoring potential until you need something? The silence was deafening. I watched the flicker of recognition, the tilt of panic, the cracks in their armor. Who are you? Dad barked, authority gone, replaced by desperation. I tapped a command. Instantly, every digital display in the lobby lit up with their sins, failed projects, defaulted loans, lost investors, broken promises. Someone you taught a valuable lesson, I said calmly. That success doesn't always wear the mask you expect. Sometimes the nobody you dismissed is the empire you can't afford to ignore. I paused, letting the weight settle before twisting the knife. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have lunch with developers who actually deliver results. Though rumor has it your country club is hiring staff, perhaps more your speed. Their faces collapsed. I watched their entourage scatter like startled birds, investors dialing brokers to dump Sinclair development stock. Later, my phone buzzed again, a message from Mom, Lily. Sweetheart, please, can we meet for lunch? We need to talk. I smiled, closing my laptop. Revenge wasn't telling them who I'd become, it was watching them realize too late that the child they called a failure had become the nightmare they never saw coming. For years, they'd let their narrow definition of success define me. Today, I redefined it for them, and for anyone watching. Take note, your worth is never dictated by someone else's expectations. Build quietly, relentlessly, and let your life speak. The story ends not with chaos, but quiet triumph. Lily Sinclair had arrived, and the world was finally watching.